Hello, well welcome back to my channel. You're watching What Helen Reads and I'm Helen, and today I've got my November reading wrap up for you. So I had a pretty slow start at the beginning of November. However, my reading absolutely picked up after the first week of November, and I ended up reading 19 books. So that's slightly more than my average, but I aim to read 15. So I was really happy with that result. And that meant in total that I read 5,736 pages, which ended up coming out to 191 pages per day. So I was really pleased with the amount of reading that I ended up getting done in November, and had some really good books. In total, I read 5 3-star books, 12 4-star reads and 2 5-star books, one of which was actually a reread. And in terms of the way I read them, I had 2 audiobooks, 4 ebooks, so basically books that I'd bought, and 13 that I read on Kindle Unlimited. Then in terms of the genres, I was trying to actually read quite a lot of Christmas like holiday romances, because I wanted to do a sort of a festive romance recommendations video, and I've got a few from last year that I wanted to recommend, but wanted to read some new ones for this year. And so I ended up reading 6 Christmas romances in total, 2 of which were actually alien Christmas romances. One was a dark romance, 1 paranormal, 1 small town, and 1 MMF romance. So they're all Christmas themed, but that was kind of like the subgenres within the Christmas romance category. And then in addition to that, I read 4 dark romances, 4 Mafia romances, 1 monster romance, a paranormal, and 3 small town romances. So I kicked off the month of November with God of Ruin by Rina Kent. So I really enjoyed this one and gave it 4 stars, and we were following Landon and Mia. Now, Landon has been the kind of antagonist, if you like, for the other 3 books. He has been very mischievous, trying to cause trouble, trying to create kind of a war within their sort of community. And if you know anything about this sort of universe, there is 2 sort of camps, if you like. All of these kids go to 2 different sort of colleges, 2 different universities on Brighton Island, which is kind of a fictitious island off the coast of England. And one of the schools is where the Russian mafia heirs go, and they're generally from America, so they're sort of like the Americans at this school. And then you have a group of kind of like billionaires but are British and who go to the other school. So you've got kind of these 2 sort of like rival schools, like the American mafia group and then the British kind of aristocracy slash billionaire types at this school. And Landon is very much in the British camp, and then Mia, who is the heroine in this one, she is a Russian mafia princess and is a sister to Nikolai, who's going to get his next book, which is coming out in the next couple of weeks. So really looking forward to reading that. Landon in this one is a true psychopath, and he is very controlling of his siblings, and like I say, has been kind of meddling in the other books. So it was really nice to see kind of his, I don't want to say redemption arc, because I don't think he ever fully redeems himself, but certainly we learn more about Landon, where he's coming from, what his motivations are, how he's feeling towards things. And Mia is absolutely kind of a light in the darkness. She becomes his muse. So basically he's also an artist, he's a sculptor, and he is desperately trying to create a masterpiece, and Mia is absolutely his muse and helps him to create a masterpiece finally from his perspective. Mia is a character that we've seen in some of the other books, and she is actually mute, so she can hear but she doesn't speak, and she communicates with American Sign Language, and Landon learns sign language very quickly, I might add, quicker than anyone I think could possibly learn it, but it's explained away in this scenario because he's a genius, and so he picks up these things really quickly. And so pretty much overnight he learns American Sign Language so he can communicate with Mia, and they have a bit of a tit-for-tat relationship going on to start with, where she's trying to get revenge for some things that Landon has done to her family in the past, but ultimately that gets her in Landon's crosshairs, where he then becomes obsessed with her, won't leave her alone until finally he wears her down, and they end up with their own HEA. So If you like Rina, have you read her books before, then absolutely recommend this one. If you've never read anything from her before, then she does write very dark romance books with, you know, very morally grey heroes generally, with a lot of dark content. So read your trigger warnings before you go into that one. So then I went on to read Shifting Gears by Melanie Moreland, and this is book 3 in the Reynolds Restoration series. It's a small town sort of romance where the heroes in these stories are all kind of mechanics or people that work on cars for Reynolds Restorations, and the man who owns it is Max, and he's a hero from book 1. And in this one we are following Brett, who is one of the mechanics there, and Kelly, and Kelly is the best friend from the heroine from book 1. Now it's sort of a second chance romance if you like, but Kelly and Brett were never 100% together in the first place, but we've definitely seen them in the previous books. And basically Kelly is a photographer, and she travels a lot basically, and when she's in town, her and Brett have been having a bit of a fling, and then she is quick to leave again. Now Brett wants something more out of this relationship. He really likes Kelly, and he wants it to grow into something a bit more real, a bit more permanent, but Kelly is very reluctant to commit to any relationship and keeps running away. And the last time she kind of like left Brett, he swore it was the last time, they wouldn't get back together, and quite a few months do pass and Kelly is gone, and Brett's kind of moved on with his life, until one day Kelly comes back to town. She comes to ask her best friend if she can come and stay with them, and it's kind of almost indefinitely, and that's when we start to realise that something has happened to Kelly while she's been travelling. And although Brett swears that he's not going to intervene and he's going to keep away, ultimately he can't help himself because he still cares for her, and he starts to try and find out more about what's happened, why she's come back, and try to help her through some of the trauma that she's been through. Of course, both of them are kind of reluctant to kind of dive head in. Brett is very scared that if he goes all in, she's gonna just run off and leave him again. And so when Kelly realises Brett is really what she wants, she does have to try and persuade Brett that this time she's not going anywhere. But I really enjoyed it. It's a really nice sort of sweet small town romance, and I gave this one 4 stars. Then I went on to read Under the Radar, again by Melanie Moreland, and this is book 4 in the Reynolds Restoration series. And in this one we were following Chase and Hannah. Now again, Chase we've known from the other books. In fact, he was the antagonist from book 1. He hurt the original heroine in that one. He was involved in a bit of a prank gone bad with his brother, and Charlie in the first book was hurt, and she ended up having to go to hospital, and Chase ended up turning himself in at the police station and ended up doing some time in prison. When he came out of prison, he went straight back to Charlie and to Max to apologise for what he's done. They forgave him straight away, and they kind of brought him into their fold, and he has been doing penance by working for Max as a bit of a gopher, a bit of a runner for the you know, the garage, and he's absolutely part of this found family that they've introduced. There's a new police officer in town called Hannah. She is also running away from something dark that happened to her in her past, and she is now in this small town, and she happens to bump into Chase, and they start a relationship, and she's absolutely aware that he is sort of an ex-con and is recently out of prison. So it's a bit of a taboo in a way because she's a police officer, but that doesn't sort of like stop them. For Hannah, that's not a barrier at all. As far as she's concerned, he's done his time, and he absolutely deserves a chance at happiness. So like I said, Hannah is a new police officer in town, and as a result she's looking for a place to stay, and Chase happens to have a spare room in his property because Brett has recently moved out to be with Kelly. So Hannah moves into the house with Chase, and now they're in close proximity together, and their relationship kind of goes from there. What I thought about this one is I actually rated it 4 stars on Goodreads, but for me it was about a 3.5 star, and I kind of rounded up. And the reason for me was this was really nice. It was a really sweet small town romance. There was no angst. It was very insta-lovey. They really liked each other from the beginning. There was kind of no hidden agenda. Chase didn't hide the fact that he used to be an ex-con. Hannah knew from the beginning. So there wasn't really any angst, and as a result for me, it was a little bit too sweet. So if you like a sweet small town romance, this will absolutely be for you. And like I said, I did enjoy it. I do like Melanie Moreland's writing, but for me it was just a little bit too sweet. Not my favourite in the series, but definitely worth a read. And so then after that I went on to read Death Adder by Naomi Lucas, and this is book 4 in the Naga Brides series. And this is a monster romance. So if you've watched any of my previous monthly wrap-ups, you'll know that I've been making my way through these, the Naga Brides series. I've been anticipating Death Adder's story. So the main character in this one is called Xalax, and he's a Death Adder. He's very much a scarred hero. We thought that he was sort of the enemy in a way in the other books. The other snakes definitely don't like him and want to stay clear. So I personally love a hero that seems to be a bit of a baddie, and to see how they're going to get their redemption arc. So I was highly anticipating this one, and it didn't disappoint. And the heroine in this one is Celeste. Now essentially what's happened in this kind of world and on this planet is that humans used to live on Earth. There was an event that happened which caused them to need to abandon Earth. It became uninhabitable and they had to leave Earth, and so it's been abandoned. And while humans have been gone from the planet, these snakes now, well, Nagas, they're half men, half snakes, now kind of occupy Earth, and they're kind of like the people who live there essentially. 1500 years have passed and the humans are now back because they left some technology behind that they now need and want to try and locate, and they've sent small groups of humans down to Earth to try and locate this technology and bring it back to help in a war effort that's going on, you know, in the galaxy. And so Celeste is one of these kind of soldiers who's sent down to the planet. Her team is attacked. There's only a couple of them that seemingly is left alive, and Calix is there to basically help her, guide her through the forest, protecting her from any kind of like bad things that might be coming to attack her. And eventually, obviously, they start to have a relationship between them. All the other snakes and other characters from the previous books definitely don't like Calix because they absolutely don't like Death Adders in general, but we absolutely see that the reputation that he's earned is actually not fair to Calix in general, and he's a much nicer snake than we believed. So it was really nice to see, really enjoyed this one, gave it 4 stars, and will absolutely be going on to read the other books in the series. Then the next one I read was Christmas with an Alien by Tana Stone, and this is a sci-fi kind of holiday romance. It was also a novella, so just about 200 pages, so a pretty quick read as well. Now this one is a standalone, but it's part of her Tribute Brides of the Drexian Warlords sort of series, and in this one we're following Griff and Caroline. Now essentially Griff is a blue alien. He is looking for a bride, and he's heard that you can go to Earth and get human brides. So he's making his way to Earth in a transporter, and he's happened to talk to an alien next to him, and he sort of said, you know, I've got a bit of a wish list in terms of what I want to get when I'm on Earth, and it happens to be coming up to Christmas time. And so there's a bit of a miscommunication where the other alien that he's talking to thinks he's actually after Christmas presents, and he suggests to Griff that he goes to see a lady called Caroline who works for a department store in New York, because Caroline is a personal shopper and she is absolutely brilliant and will be able to get him anything he needs from his list. So Griff thinks that Caroline is going to be able to find him a bride, and this wish list that he's got is actually attributes for the woman that he wants to marry. And so when he turns up and asks Caroline to be his personal shopper to get himself a bride, at first she says no, but then her boss suggests that she helps him, and of course Caroline then starts to help him find a bride. And during this whole sequence of events, Griff starts to realise that he maybe doesn't want Caroline to find him a bride because he's already found her. So this is a fun, short, sweet Christmas alien romance. It's nothing groundbreaking. I gave this one 3 stars, but I did absolutely enjoy it. It was a fun Christmas read, like I said, so would recommend if you like an alien romance. So then I picked up Sweet Intensity by Zoe Blake. So this is a relatively new release, but it'd been out a couple of weeks before I read this one. And this is book 6 in the Ruthless Obsession series, and this series follows a group of Russian mafia heroes. Now I absolutely love Zoe Blake's Russian mafia heroes. They're completely over the top, completely obsessed with their women. When they first, you know, make eye contact with the female characters in their books, they become obsessed from the moment they see them. Determine that they're going to be theirs and absolutely do not take no for an answer. There's no discussion, there's no conversation, they just take what they want. And I absolutely love that. Zoe Blake writes it in such a great way that it is completely compelling. So in this particular one, we're following Anton and Bryn, and Anton kind of looks after some sort of casino sort of gambling places. And Bryn happens to go to one of his casinos one night. Because she's actually doing her friend a favour. So she's a hairdresser by day and she has a friend who is pregnant. Her boyfriend, so her friend's boyfriend, is basically not a great person, and they don't have a lot of money, and what they kind of do is they go to these gambling places and cheat in order to win some money so that they can pay their rent and things. Now, because the friend is pregnant, she is unable to go to do this sort of gambling, cheating, stealing, and so she kind of convinces Bryn to go in her place. So she goes along to Anton's casino with her friend's boyfriend to try and help him cheat at a game of poker. What Bryn doesn't know, and what her friend doesn't know either, is that this boyfriend is actually a mafia family member. He's like the nephew of another Russian hero from one of the books, and he's a bit of a good for nothing, so they can't really control him. He's always doing wild and crazy things, and he's decided he's going to come to this particular casino to steal from Anton, basically. And Anton recognises him straight away. He realises what's happening straight away, and the boyfriend is taken away and dealt with by his uncle, and in the meantime Bryn becomes Anton's property, and he decides, after he punishes her for stealing from him, he's absolutely going to keep her and she doesn't get any choice in the matter. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Obviously their relationship goes from there, and I absolutely loved it. I gave it 4 stars and would highly recommend. So sticking to mafia romances, I then went on to Unholy Vows by Kane, and this is book 1 in the original Sin duet. This is another mafia romance. In fact, it's Italian mafia this time, and in this one we have a sort of an age gap situation. It's also a forced marriage situation as well, and we're following Renata and Charlie. So Charlie is our heroine in this one, and she is not related to the mafia at all in any way. She is actually working 2 jobs as well as studying to be a nurse, and she's the sole carer for her sister Lucy. Now, they lost their parents when they were sort of teens, and they've been brought up in homes, and so Charlie's been always very protective of Lucy and has always done everything she can to take care of her, and as a result she works herself to the bone, basically trying to provide for Lucy. Lucy is a bit of a brat, I have to say, and she doesn't seem to fully appreciate everything that Charlie's done for her. In fact, she's always telling her to have more fun and to loosen up, and why she always sits so serious all the time. And pretty much she's serious all the time because she's training to be a nurse and trying to hold down 2 jobs and look after her sister. So life is pretty tough, and like I say, Lucy doesn't really fully appreciate everything Charlie does. Lucy is a bit of a rebel, so she gets herself in with the wrong crowd, and she gets herself a boyfriend who is a drug dealer, and he's trying to get himself into the mafia. So he's basically trying to do a deal with a mafia group in the city, basically. Now, when Charlie can't get a hold of Lucy, she starts to worry, so she tracks her down because she's got a tracker on her phone, and it leads her to this warehouse. And when she gets inside the warehouse, she realises that Lucy's in a spot of bother, and so is her boyfriend, and they actually witness her boyfriend being shot. Now, Lucy and Charlie initially escape, but they end up having to go to Renato, who's the head of the Mafia, the Italian Mafia, and Charlie ends up having to do a deal in order to save their life. She swears that she won't tell anyone what she's seen, what she knows, but this is not good enough for Renato, and in the end she is sort of forced to marry him because the only other alternative would be that he would kill her. So she's got two choices, get married or, you know, say goodbye. So Charlie ends up marrying Renata, and Lucy ends up having to move in with them, and now she's sort of in a bit of a hostage situation. So it's a bit of a captor situation, of which Lucy is not too happy, and she keeps trying to escape and keeps trying to you know, go to the police and everything, and is very, very difficult with Charlie, even though Charlie is trying to do everything she can to keep them both alive. So this one was a little bit frustrating because Lucy is a bit of a brat, but overall I really like the relationship between Renata and Charlie. The kind of the third act conflict, if you like, is no surprises. When you start reading this, you can pretty much guess what's going to happen from there, and the fact that Renata's going to go and have to save both, you know, Lucy and Charlie at some point. But I really did like it. It was the first book I've read from this author, as far as I'm aware anyway, and I definitely enjoyed it. We'll definitely be going on to read more books by this author, and I'll look out for the second book in this duet as well. Then straight on to another Mafia romance, which was Relentless Devil by Kylie Kent, and this is book 1 of the Sons of Valentino series. So again, this is the first book I've read by Kylie Kent, but it is the next generational series, so I probably will at some point go back to read Valentino's sort of story, but she's written a series of 4 books that are all based on the sons of Valentino, obviously, and this is book 1. So this is another Italian mafia situation, and in this one we're following Maddie and Theo. I did really enjoy this one. I rated it 4 stars. But I have to say it's pretty forgettable. I really struggled, even though I only read it a couple of weeks ago, I really struggled to remember what the plot was about. And because I read it on the same day that I read Unholy Vows and this one, in terms of their plot, kind of like blurred together in my mind, and I wasn't 100% sure what happened in each of the books. Because this was another situation where the main heroine, Maddie, she has got a sister, and she is the sole carer for this sister. They've lost their parents, and she is working 2 jobs in order to make ends meet and look after her sister. The good thing about this though is her sister in this one is really, really nice. She absolutely loves Maddie to death, but the issue here is that she has actually got kidney failure, and so Maddie is desperately trying to raise enough money to pay the medical bills, and also they're really, really hoping they're going to get basically a donor so that she can have a new kidney. So this is all kind of going on. One of the jobs that she has is as like a server in a coffee shop, and one day Theo goes into the coffee shop, she bumps into him and spills coffee on him, and he instantly takes a shine to her and becomes obsessed with her, and then starts to stalk her a little bit. So he will drive past the coffee shop, but he kind of like did a bit of a background check on her to see what's going on. He sends his kind of like right hand man in to get coffee from the shop to do a bit of spying on her and come back. So she starts to get this feeling or sensation that someone's watching her, and she keeps looking out for Theo because she thinks, I'm sure I just saw that guy, and he kind of keeps disappearing. Like I say, so it's pretty insta-lovey from Theo's side of things, and he kind of decides that he's gonna, you know, he's going to muscle in on her life and that she's going to belong to him. Now she's trying to keep him a bit at arm's length. She's sort of letting him in a little bit, but she's kind of like reluctant because she pretty much works out who he is and what he's up to. So she's a little bit reluctant at first to start a relationship with him. Anyway, it's coming up to Christmas, something like that, and he goes away to spend time with his family, and then something else happens to her sister. She is not very well, ends up going into hospital, so she ends up having this big medical bill that she needs to pay, and then she hears about this sort of like strip club that's looking for some new workers, and she decides that she's going to go along, and the intention for her is that she's going to go along as a like somebody who serves drinks in this strip club, not actually to strip herself, but what she doesn't realise it is owned by a different mafia group, and they have every intention of kind of selling her to the highest bidder. And so when Theo gets wind of where she actually is and the fact that she's in this club, he comes back from his holiday, barges in, rescues her, but ends up having to shoot 3 people from this other mafia, and thereby kind of starting a bit of a turf war, a bit of a war between these mafia families. So she ends up getting herself in quite a bit of trouble. So she is now, you know, in the crosshairs, if you like. Like I say, I did really enjoy this one, but because I'd read so many mafia romances sort of on the bounce and around this one, I did struggle to remember exactly what the plot was and what happened in it. But like I say, I enjoyed it and will definitely be reading more from that author. So the next sort of book I'm going to talk about, there's actually 3, it's part of a trilogy. I'm going to talk about them all together. And that was The Initiation by Nikki Sloane, The Obsession, and then The Deception. So that's 3 books. They're all fairly short, around the 200-page mark. So collectively, they're like one long book. And it's books 1, 2, and 3 in the Filthy Rich American series. So I'd heard a lot about The Initiation by Nikki Sloane, and I know a lot of people, it came highly recommended from a lot of people, and I hadn't read it before. In fact, I had never read anything from Nikki Sloane before, but I was very intrigued by it. It sounded like it was quite up my street. It was a dark romance. There was definitely a lot of intrigue going into this one, but I did pretty much go into it blind, not really knowing exactly what it was all going to be about. And I was absolutely obsessed from the first page. It was such a page turner, I couldn't put it down. I became so absorbed in it, and it was like pearl clutchingly good, I'll say, because it was also shocking, it was creepy, it was like psychologically suspenseful. Like, yeah, I was just left in a state of, I wasn't quite sure what I was reading or what I got myself into. Essentially what's happening here is that the Hale family are the billionaires. McAllister Hale, he's head of the family and he owns a bank. It's very, very successful, extremely wealthy. The thing is, he's not that great of a guy, particularly through these books, and he's very, very creepy, a little bit sleazy, and he is extremely controlling. Now, he's got a son called Royce, and Royce is desperate to sit on the board of this company, and he gets his opportunity to become a board member. The thing is, this book is called The Initiation, and there's a rumour that when you are promoted to the board, not only do you have to be married or going to be married, but some initiation happens, and it's sexual in nature. We're not quite sure what it is, we don't know what it is, but as a result of this, Royce now needs to get himself a fiancée and get himself married. Now, since he's been quite a young boy, it's been expected that he's going to marry Maris' sister, because that's what his mother always wanted. They've always been close, their families have always been close, and they earmarked Maris' sister quite early on to be Royce's wife. However, Royce doesn't like the sister in that way, and she doesn't really like him, so she ends up getting herself pregnant so that she doesn't have to marry Royce. So when they kind of finally come and say, right, Royce has been promoted to the board, he needs himself a wife, so now it's time to step up and be the wife, they kind of have to admit that their sister is pregnant, is now not suitable, so Maris is now next in line, and Maris is then asked to become Royce's fiancée. Now, she doesn't want to do this because she has never wanted to get married. That's always going to be her sister's job, and so she absolutely doesn't want to marry, you know, someone against her will. But she's in a bit of a pickle because her family have actually lost all of their money. The dad has made some very bad investments and they are desperate for cash. And so essentially McAllister, the you know, head of the family, he sort of makes this deal that says to her, you will marry my son, and if you do, then I'll make sure your family are okay financially, and they won't be ruined and all of that good stuff, but you have to marry my son. And so she kind of enters in this agreement where she'll be the fiancée. She'll also participate in this initiation, we don't know what it is, and she's going to move into their house. Now, it is very, very creepy, very suspenseful, like I say, extremely dark. Royce appears to like Maris. He's definitely got an agenda. and he pretty much warns Marius that she cannot trust anyone, including him. He's like, I do like you, I do want to marry you, but I have an agenda here and I have to win at all costs. And so when we're together in private, you can actually absolutely trust that I'm telling you the truth and you can believe what I say. But in public, I will act differently. I'll say things that will hurt you. And above all else, you cannot trust my father. He's going to do everything he can to manipulate you, to convince you that I'm not right for you, and to basically worm his way in himself. And so what happens is this weird sort of like three-way relationship. Like absolutely, it's always about Royce and Marist. They're the couple that are ultimately going to get the HEA. But McAllister is this massive sort of blocker. He's much older. It's very, very creepy because he's trying to win over the, you know, the woman who will be his son's wife. He's already, you know, got a wife of his own who's actually Royce's stepmom. But like I say, he also wants to win at all costs. He doesn't like the fact that Royce appears to like Marist. He wants to try and split them up, take Marist away from his son in that sense. So although she's going to be the wife, he's like, it can be in name only, me and you can be together instead. And so it's just really sort of like I say, dark and creepy, but at the same time absolutely compelling. I couldn't put it down. I absolutely needed to know what was going to happen, who was lying to who was ultimately telling the truth, and how this was all going to play out. Now the first part of this, so basically book one, the first part, the initiation, I rated 5 stars because, like I say, I went into it blind. I didn't know what to expect. I was kind of completely blown away by the whole scenario. Completely obsessed with what I was reading. I couldn't wait to move on to the other 2 parts. The Obsessionist book 2, I didn't like that one quite as much. It was a bit of a lull in the story in a way, because you've obviously got this amazing story that gets right out of the gate in book 1, and then we have a bit of a lull before we go into book 3, and there's just a lot more kind of mind games that are being played between everyone and lots of different stuff that kind of goes down. However, book 2 does end on, well, books 1 and book 2 end on these really big cliffhangers where you're just like shocked by what you've kind of read. And then as we go into book 3, which is called The Deception, again, I really did like this, but still rated it 4 stars, where ultimately we kind of wind up into the conclusion where we kind of like then get the complete picture about exactly what's going on and how it's going to work out. Because for a while you're like, I don't know how this is going to turn out or how it's going to end, but it's really, really good. So that is a trilogy. There's 5 books in the series in total, and actually McAllister's book is next. It's book 4. Absolutely intrigued to read that, because again, I love a villain who gets his redemption arc, and I feel very much that McAllister is absolutely the villain in these first 3 stories. We absolutely don't like him, but by the end of book 3 we have started to feel some sympathy towards him, starting to figure out a little bit about where he's coming from, and kind of left a little bit hopeful that he may be able to redeem himself in book 4. So we'll definitely go on to read that. I haven't yet, but I probably will pick it up fairly soon. So if you haven't read those yet, they are a few years old now, but I would absolutely recommend them. Like I say, I was totally obsessed from the first page. That was all very intense, so I went on to something a bit lighter, and I picked up Walking in a Witchy Wonderland by Juliette Cross. This is kind of book 3.5 in the Stay a Spell series, but what it actually is a collection of 5 short stories that focus on the different characters we've met so far in the Stay a Spell series. Overall, I really like this. Like I say, they're really quick short reads, like short stories as part of one book. So overall I gave it 4 stars, and the stories cover, basically the first one is a short story about Evie and Matteo, and then the second one is a short story about Devraj and Isadora. Then we got a really cute short story with JJ and Charlie, who are kind of side characters in the series and very close friends with the Sapphire sisters, and we finally get their romance. There's another one where we see Gareth and Lavinia before their actual book takes place. I think this is why it's 3.5, because it's just before they kind of get together. And then the 5th story is with Nico and Violet. So yeah, they're all kind of like Christmassy themed. They're all set at Christmas, like different things sort of happening. And if you have read the other books in the series, then I would highly recommend. And if you haven't, I'd recommend the Stay a Spell series overall, and then to weave this one in over Christmas while we're still in the festive mood. On the same day, I also coincidentally finished Wolf Gone Wild. I was actually listening to it as a reread, but as an audiobook. So I've got the physical copy here, which I read last year, but I fancied a bit of a reread and listening to the audiobook. So that's what I did. And so this one is book 1 in the Stay a Spell series. In this one, where we get Matteo and Evie's story. The audiobook is brilliantly narrated by Aidan Snow and Joanna Fairview. Aidan Snow does a brilliant job of not only capturing a great voice for Matteo, but also the voice for Alpha, who is Matteo's kind of inner wolf. And I absolutely loved it. It's really, really low and rumbly voice that Aidan Snow has, and I thought it was perfect for Alpha's character. So essentially what happens in this one is Matteo is a werewolf, but he's got a hex that's been placed upon him, which means that he can't transform into his wolf, and as a result his inner wolf Alpha starts to talk to him, and over a couple of months Alpha gets more and more kind of distressed, more and more noisy in his head, to the point where Matteo becomes quite desperate and he goes in search of the Savoy sisters, because he's heard that Evie Savoy is a hex breaker, and therefore he goes to her and pleads for her to help him break this hex. Now, traditionally werewolves are kind of like the outcasts in the paranormal community, and particularly the Savoy sisters don't tend to mingle too much with werewolves because werewolves can be dangerous. But Evie realises that Matteo needs her help, and Jules, the eldest sister, the eldest Savoy sister, agrees that Evie can basically help him break the hex. And then they start to realise that while Evie is in close proximity to Matteo, his Alpha is much calmer, he doesn't speak to him as much, and he can get stuff done. And so he strikes this deal with Evie that while she's researching how to break the hex, he can spend 4 hours a day with her, because then he can crack on with his work, of which Matteo is kind of a metal worker, like he creates sculptures out of metal, and he's able to kind of get his work done because he's calm in her presence. This is really, really a lovely paranormal romance. There's an edge of, you know, a bit of mystery, a bit of suspense, because we don't know who's done this to Matteo, why they've done it, how they're going to break the hex. But the relationship that grows between Matteo and Evie is really, really sweet. There's lots of references in here to Star Wars, because Evie is a big sort of nerd. She loves, you know, Star Wars and the Marvel universe and things like that. So there's lots of cute references to that in here, which I really appreciated, loving those universes myself. So like I said, this was a read for me. First time I'd listened to it on audiobook though, would highly recommend, and rated it 4 stars. Then I jumped back to another Christmas novella in Yool by Tana Stone. So this is another alien Christmas romance. This is part of the Holiday with an Alien series. It's number 4 in that series, but basically the Holiday with an Alien series is a series of novellas that have been written by different authors. So I really like Tana Stone, so I just picked up her book from this series just to see what it was like. And in this one we're following Yool and Brooke. Now, a bit like the other one I mentioned earlier, this is a standalone, but it's set in her Raider Warlords of the Vandar series, so kind of in that universe. And in this one, Yool is kind of like a smuggler, and he's docked at this kind of like space station, and he goes in there for a drink, and he wants to do a bit of gambling while he's there. And meanwhile, Brooke is also there. She also wants to do a spot of gambling before she goes home, but she's part of kind of like the rebels, and she needs to go home to her rebel base. Now, Yool and Brooke have this card game between them. Both of them are trying to kind of, you know, convince the other that they don't know how to play cards, but essentially they're both card sharks, if you like. But Brooke does end up beating Yool, because Yool gets a bit too big for his britches. And part of the winnings is that Yool has to go back to the rebel base with Brooke and pretend to be her boyfriend at the Christmas party, and that's because she's trying to put off another guy on the base who's, you know, he's got his eye on her and she's not interested. So she thinks if she turns up with this boyfriend, this alien boyfriend, he'll back off. And so Yool goes with her to the party and things go from there. So again, it's a really short novella. It was a fun, quick read and I rated it 3 stars. I went on to read How the Hitman Stole Christmas. It's by Sam Mariano, and it's a dark holiday romance. So Sam Mariano normally writes really dark romances. I think this is probably the sweetest one that she's ever written. I could be wrong. I've not read every single book that she's written before, but based on what I've read of her so far, I pretty much think this is the sweetest one, certainly that I've read anyway. And in this one, we're following Jasper and Autumn. Now, Jasper is a hitman. At the very start of this book, he's just finished his latest hit. But it is Christmas, the snow is coming down and he's on his way home. But he gets a call from his sister and the sister is begging him to go home for the holidays. He's not been back for several years because he doesn't get on with their mum, but the sister says, please come, I've got a new fella, I want you to check him out because I trust your judgment, so please come home for the holidays, and he agrees. The thing is, his sister thinks he's got a girlfriend, so he's kind of a bit short there. Luckily though, on the way back to his house to pick up his stuff so he could go on then and spend Christmas with his family, he sees a car that's broken down on the side of the road. In that car is our heroine Autumn, and he originally intends to pull over and help her genuinely because she's got a flat tyre and he's going to help change her tyre. But then he decides that actually it's a perfect opportunity to kidnap her and take her home for the holidays as his girlfriend. Now, Autumn's story is actually that she has got a boyfriend, but he's a bit of a douche. And she's actually gone back with her husband for the Christmas holidays to meet his family. But because he's a bit of a douche, he's actually sent her out to buy Christmas presents for him while he's having fun with his family. And she's on her way back from the Christmas shopping when she gets a flat tyre, breaks down on the side of the road. So to be honest, her relationship with her boyfriend's already a bit on the rocks. She's already starting to think that he is a bit of a douche and maybe she'd be better off without him. And so when Jasper comes along and offers her help, she willingly goes in the car with him. And it's not for several miles later that she realises he doesn't seem to be taking me to a garage to get my car fixed. Something is going on, and then she realises that she's actually been kidnapped. And while Jasper does threaten her to start with, she quickly relents and agrees to go home with him for the holidays and play the part of his doting girlfriend, and their relationship goes from there. So like I say, one of the sweetest San Marianos I probably think you'll ever read, but it was a really, really great fun Christmas read. Really enjoyed it and gave it 4 stars. Then I read Christmas in the Highlands by Donna Ashcroft, and this is a very sweet small town romance set in the Scottish Highlands, but it has absolutely no steam whatsoever. So I wanted to warn you about that just in case you were fancying this one, because there is one sex scene, but it's behind closed doors. Really what you're reading this one for is the small town vibes. It's very, very magically Christmas, lots of snow, and it very much reminded me of a Hallmark movie. So I did enjoy this one, but it didn't blow me away, and I rated it 3 stars. So in this one we're following Belle and Jack. Now, Belle is very self-sacrificing kind of person. She's very, very charitable, always doing things for other people, and as such the villagers put on her quite a lot. And now she's a school teacher at the local school, and a couple of things are happening here. One, another teacher is off sick and can't organise the school nativity, so she's asked to do it. So she agrees to do it, even though it's a lot more work for her, and it's going to be quite a big task to sort of manage at this late stage. Meanwhile, there's also a family who are being made homeless because they need to get out of their rented accommodation. There's nowhere else for them to go, and so she wants to offer them to come and stay with her. But while she's cycling home after school, she slips in on the ice and accidentally kind of runs into an old lady, Adina, and basically knocks the old lady over. She hurts her ankle, and then Belle ends up taking Adina back to her house, and then she says she'll stay with her for a couple of weeks while she's healing from this injury, and she'll make sure that she's completely looked after. So that's kind of the setup for this story. This old lady Lola lives in a really big house on the outskirts of town, is very, very wealthy, but she's kind of become quite lonely and isolated after her husband died. Yeah, kind of lives on her own. Now, however, she does have a grandson, and the grandson is a big shot lawyer in London, and when he hears about his grandma's injury, he decides he's going to come home to check on his grandma. When he gets there, he obviously meets Belle, and he's very, very suspicious, because why would this person volunteer with no hidden agenda to look after his grandma? So he absolutely suspects that she's after his grandma's money. So he doesn't get off on a very good foot with Belle to start with. And conversely, Belle doesn't particularly like Jack either. He swaggers in, he thinks he owns the place, but not only that, she uncovers a plot where he is trying to get his grandma to move out of her house and move into a a care home for the elderly, of which she really doesn't want to do it. So Belle and Jack are a bit of loggerheads here. So you can see already the setup here is very, very Hallmark movie-esque. And then what happens is a series of events which is very, very sweet and very, very Christmassy, all to do with them organising their nativity, doing things with the children. There's a donkey in this one, and a couple of scenarios where they are kind of in very close proximity to one another, and eventually they start to realise that the other one isn't as bad as they thought, and they get their HEA. So it's very, very Christmassy, absolutely puts you into the mood, but very, very sweet and light-hearted romance. Then after that I finished another audio book, but I've got the physical book for this, Heartless by Elsie Silver, and this is book 2 in the Chestnut Spring series. You must have heard of this one. If you haven't, I don't know where you've been. You've clearly not been watching any other videos on YouTube, because everybody is talking about this and has been talking about it all year. So this is a reread for me. I did read it before, but like I say, I took the opportunity to listen to the audiobook, and it is narrated by Stephen Dexter and Vanessa Edwin, who again I think both did a really, really good job. This is a small town single dad romance. We're following Cade Eaton. He's the eldest brother of the Eatons, and he has a little boy called Luke. He's always he's very much a caretaker. He feels a lot of responsibility to look after his family, a lot of responsibility to look after his son and take care of the ranch and the farm, and he is struggling for a nanny. So he needs a nanny to take care of Luke during the summer holidays, and he can't find anyone suitable. And so Summer, who is the heroine from book 1, suggests her best friend should come and do it, Willa, and Willa turns up basically to interview for this position and to look after Luke for the summer. Now, Cade and Willa have already had a bit of a meet cute because they met in a coffee shop. He inadvertently picks up her panties when her spare pair falls out of her handbag, and so when he realises that it's the same woman who's going to be looking after his son, he goes, absolutely not, I don't want Willa looking after Luke. But pretty much he's run out of all other options, and not only that, but Luke takes an instant shine to Willa, and so Cade relents and lets her become the nanny, but she's going to be a live-in nanny, so they're in close proximity together. The relationship that Willa and Luke have together is absolutely magical and fantastic and just brilliant, and as a result Cade very quickly falls in love with Willa as well. So this is fantastic read, rated at 5 stars, and would highly recommend if you haven't read it yet. So just 2 more to go, and so the next one I read was Trick Shot by Kayla Gross, and this is another novella, like a Christmas novella. It's an MMF romance, and it's also kind of a case of mistaken identity, because what happens in this is we have Leo, Jace and Riley, and Leo is twins with somebody called Lucas, and Lucas is a famous ice hockey player. Leo was also a very good ice hockey player, but due to an injury he's now no longer able to play the sport, and he's a sports agent instead. But nevertheless, Leo and Riley happen to be going to the airport because they're gonna take flights home for for the holidays, but both of their flights are cancelled when there's too much snow, and they get talking at the bar, and Leo invites Riley to go home with him instead of going back to her own place, and she agrees, but she's going not specifically because she thinks he's famous, but she does mistake him for Lucas, and Leo doesn't correct her. So now she's going home with who she thinks is Lucas. And when she gets there, he's got his friend there called Jace, and they they're sort of like not officially boyfriends, but they absolutely have a relationship together. Leo in this is pansexual and Jace is bisexual, and so they've had a relationship on and off for some time. And they've often shared partners as well. So when they bring Riley back to the place, they absolutely intend to share her, and they have a very steamy night together. And they form a very, very close attachment straight away, where Leo and Jace are very much thinking that actually this could be a permanent arrangement. However, in the morning, obviously, Riley finds out that Leo's lied to her and he's not actually Lucas, he is in fact Leo, and this causes a bit of a third act breakup. However, it's not really a third act breakup, doesn't last too long. This is only a novella, so it's quite short, and you really get exactly what it says on the tin. I enjoyed this one. It was a quick, fun read, lots of steam in this one, but I only rated it 3-star just because I don't think it was anything special. And then the last one I read in the month of November was Nero by S.J. Tilley. This is another Mafia romance, and it's book 1 in the Alliance series. And in this one, we're following Nero and Peyton. So essentially, Nero is the head of the Alliance, or one of the heads of the Alliance, and this book starts where he's kind of trying to stay out of the view of the police, and he happens to be going past where she lives. She lives in an apartment on the 2nd floor, but basically there's a balcony and she's got a door open. He sees this, he climbs up and he climbs into her balcony kind of to evade capture by the police, and she happens to be in her PJs watching The Wizard of Oz and eating popcorn, and he just plonks himself down next to her, takes her popcorn, starts eating it, starts to watch the movie. She is completely taken aback, a little bit scared, but kind of just sort of sits there, doesn't say too much. Eventually they have sort of a conversation. She obviously realises he's hiding from the police and everything, and then eventually he kind of leaves. Now, he becomes obsessed with her quite quickly, so this is another insta love sort of situation on his side, and he does start to stalk her quite a bit, and even occupies an apartment over the way so he can kind of like keep tabs on her and things like that. But she's very intrigued by him and is very interested in seeing him again, and one night she reopens her balcony doors almost as an invitation for him to come in, and he takes it, and when they are together he basically says to her, "You invited me in, so now I've decided that you're going to be mine, and that's going to be that, and we're going to go from there." The thing is, he knows that getting into a relationship with him is going to put her very much in danger, and it kind of does. So as they start to develop this sort of relationship, she very much is sort of in danger. The wrong people notice who she is, and eventually things go down where he is forced to go and rescue her, in a very typical Mafia fashion. But I really, really did like it. I thoroughly enjoyed this one, and I went straight on to read the second book in the series, which is King, which I was hoping I was going to finish in November, but I didn't quite get around to it, so I've got about 20% of that book left to read, so you'll definitely get to hear my thoughts on that in my December wrap up. So that is it. I've tried to go as quickly as I can through those books because I read 19 this month, and I normally talk for at least an hour, so I'm hoping to get it around the hour mark, hopefully a little bit less, but hopefully not too much more. As always, I want to say thank you very much for watching. If you made it this far, I really do appreciate you taking the time to listen to what I have to say. If you liked it, please give me a thumbs up. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content from me, and I'll see you next time. Bye. And yeah, I liked it. It was yeah, I liked it. And he's a sports what is he, a sports part of the winnings is that Yool has to go back to the rebel base with Brooke and attend her Christmas party. yeah, and go with her and pretend to be her boyfriend at the works. Then the next one is Devraj and Lavinia. I think it's Lavinia. No. But in doing this, basically, she kind of gets herself and that she kind of belongs to him. Oh, just go and had to sort myself out then. I had something in my eye, so my eye is probably going to be red now, which is not great. Right, we've got stuff over there on the right hand side, so I think we're good. We're good.